So the title for our message today is called Brokenness in the Blessedness of Possessing Nothing. And we're going to be looking at the story of Jacob and his journey to knowing God and the things that he went through as a man who was trying to make his life better, and the mistakes that he made, and how actually God came through. So if you would please, let's read from verses 1 of chapter 29 of Genesis to verses 11. It says that, "So Jacob went on his journey and came to the land of the people of the east. And he looked, and he saw a well in the field, and behold, there were 3 flocks of sheep lying by it. For out of that well they watered the flocks. A large stone was on the well's mouth. Now all the flocks would be gathered there, and they would roll the stone from the well's mouth, water the sheep, and put the stone back in its place on the well's mouth. And Jacob said to them, 'My brethren, where are you from?' And they said, 'We are from Haran.' Then he said to them, 'Do you know Laban, the son of Nahor?' And they said, 'We know him.' So he said to them, 'Is he well?' And they said, 'He is well. And look, his daughter Rachel is coming with the sheep.' Then he said, 'Look, it is still high day. It is not time for the cattle to be gathered together. Water the sheep and go and feed them.' But they said, 'We cannot until all the flocks are gathered together, and they have rolled the stone from the well's mouth. Then water the sheep.' Now while he was still speaking with them, Rachel came with her father's sheep, for she was a shepherdess. And it came to pass, when Jacob saw Rachel, the daughter of Laban, his mother's brother, and the sheep of Laban's mother's brother, and Jacob went near and rolled the stone from the well's mouth and watered the flock of Laban, his mother's brother. Then Jacob kissed Rachel and lifted up his voice and wept." Heavenly Father, we thank you so much for this text, and we pray that, Lord, you bless it. Bless me as I teach it. Lord, I pray that you also may fill us with your Spirit. Help us not only be hearers of your word, but also to be doers of it. We love you, oh God, and in your name we prayed. Amen. So here in chapter 29, we see Jacob. He said he was on his journey and he went to the people of the east. So we see that actually here, Jacob was a stranger. It's obvious that where he was at, he didn't know the people there. And he was looking for some people at the same time. But he was able to reach at this well, and he saw some people who had brought in their flocks and sheep to give them water. And then he asked them about Nahor. Nahor was supposed to be his uncle, the brother to his mother. So they told him, you know what, his daughter is actually coming very soon. And then as he waited, there she came, and he knew that she was. So he helped her to roll away the stone from the well's mouth and helped her to water the sheep. And then he came close to her, and then the Bible says that he lifted up his voice and he wept. So here we see that there was something going on, and I can't imagine this poor girl Rachel seeing a total stranger coming to you. Yes, he helps you, which looks like he's a good guy, but after helping you, he comes, he gives you a hug, and he cries. Look. This is what happened. And she was like, I don't know what's going on, but okay. So, in order for us to understand exactly what was going on with Jacob, why was he crying? Why was he weeping? It looks like there was a problem. If he's not happy to see Rachel, there's a problem. There was some emotions going on. There are emotions that were invoked. So we're going to first go back, actually. We're going to go back almost 40 years back to see what had happened. By the way, I read from New King James Version in case you're wondering. So we're going to go back to chapter 25, and then we will see the life of Jacob. We're going to pick up from actually when he was still in his mother's womb, up to the point where we've started when he's about 40 years. It says, we're going to read from, I said 25. We'll read from verses 19. Yes, we're going to read from verses 19 to like 26. It says, this is the genealogy of Isaac, Abraham's son. Abraham begot Isaac. Isaac was 40 years old when he took Rebekah, his wife, the daughter of Bethuel, the Syrian of Paddan Aram, the sister of Laban the Syrian. Now Isaac pleaded with the Lord for his wife because she was barren. Then the Lord granted his plea, and Rebekah, his wife, conceived. But the children struggled together within her. I want you to highlight that. And she said, if all is well, why am I like this? So she went to inquire of the Lord. And the Lord said to her, 2 nations are in your womb. 2 people shall be separated from your body. 1 people shall be stronger than the other, and the older shall serve the younger. So when the days were fulfilled for her to give birth, indeed there were twins in her womb, and the first came out red. He was like a hairy garment all over, so they called him Esau. Afterward his brother came out, and his hand took hold of Esau's heel. So his name was called Jacob. Isaac was 60 years old when she bore them. So let's stop there for a moment, and we see. We see here that actually Isaac is the father of Jacob and Esau. And we see that Rebekah is the mother of Jacob and Esau, and these were twins. But we see in verses 22 that there was a struggle in her womb. When she was pregnant, she felt something going on in her body, like she didn't understand exactly what it was. And I don't know some people who say that ultrasound is a modern day technology. No, it's not. Because here he said that, you know what? She went and inquired from the Lord. And the Lord told her, you have twins. That's ultrasound. But even this ultrasound was even much more sophisticated than what we have, because it was able to tell the nature of the children that were there. It's like, you know what? They're going to be 2 boys, and they're going to be actually rivals. They're going to fight. And that fight began right in the womb. Imagine having 2 babies in your belly and they're fighting already. So, the firstborn twin was called Esau because he was red and hairy. And the second-born twin was named Jacob because he was a heel catcher. Everyone, they named them according to how they looked. You know, I like actually, I think giving birth and naming children those days was so easy. Why? Because you didn't have to go to the internet to look for a list of names. But all you got to do when you see the kid coming out, what he looks like, that's what you call him. You are Blue. Your name shall be called Blue. That's what they did. They didn't have any plans of what shall we call the name. Like, wait, when they are born, whatever they look like, whatever they behave is what we call them. Oh, he's red, he's hairy, Esau. Oh, he's come with his hand holding onto his brother's heel catcher. But I want us to also understand that sometimes people tend to live according to their names that they are given. And I remember I don't know how many of you have read about the story of this guy called Nabal in 1 Samuel 25. Let's try to read from there briefly. 25 verses 4 to 26. It says, when David heard in the wilderness that Nabal was shearing his sheep, David sent 10 young men, and David said to the young men, "Go up to Carmel, go to Nabal, and greet him in my name. And thus you shall say to him who lives in prosperity, peace be to you, peace be to your house, and peace to you, and peace to all that you have. Now that I have heard that you have shearers, your shepherds were with us, and we did not hurt them, nor was there anything missing from them all the while they were in Carmel. Ask your young men, they will tell you. Therefore, let my young men find favor in your eyes, for we have come on a feast day. Please give whatever comes to you, to your hand, to your servants, and to your son David." So David's young men came. They spoke to Nabal according to all these words in the name of David and waited. Then Nabal answered David's servant and said, "Who is David? And who is the son of Jesse? These are many servants nowadays who break away, each one from his master. Shall I then take my bread and water and my meat and that I have killed for my shearers and give it to men when I do not know where they are from?" So David's young men turned on their heels and went back. And they came to and told him all these words. Then David was so angry and said, "Every man got up on your sword." So every man got it on his sword, and David also got it on his sword. And about 400 men went out with David. 200 stayed with the supplies. Verses 14 says, "Now one of the young men told Abigail, Nabal's wife, saying, 'Look, David sent messengers from the wilderness to greet our master, and he reviled them. But the men were very good to us. They did not hurt us, nor did we miss anything as long as we accompanied them. When we were in the fields, they were a wall to us, both by night and day. All the time we were with them keeping the sheep. Now therefore, know and consider what you will do, for harm is determined against your master and against all his household, for he is such a scoundrel that one cannot speak to him.' Then Abigail made haste and took 200 loaves of bread, 2 skins of wine, 5 sheep already dressed, 5 seers of roasted grain, 100 clusters of raisins, and 200 cakes of figs, and loaded them on the donkeys. And she said to her servants, 'Go on before me. See, I'm coming after you.' But she did not tell her husband Nabal. So it was as she rode on the donkey that she went down under the cover of the hill, and there were David and his men coming down toward her, and she met them. Now David said, 'Surely in vain I protected all that his fellow has in the wilderness, so that nothing missed all that belongs to him.' Now when Abigail saw David, she dismounted quickly from the donkey, fell on her face before, and bowed down to the ground. So she fell at his feet and said, 'Oh, on me, oh my Lord, on me, let this iniquity be. And please let your maidservant speak to your ears, and hear the words of your maidservant.' Verses 25 says, 'Please let not my Lord regard this scoundrel Nabal, for as his name is, so he is. Nabal is his name, and folly is with him.' So she was like, 'You know what? Do not even pay attention to that man. His name is called Nabal, and Nabal means foolish. As his name is, so he is. Take from your maidservant the things that are presented.' And she was very smart, and she was able to appease the anger of David, and David turned away in peace, and he never killed anybody. So, going back to our story of how names also can influence character, we see here with Nabal, his name actually also influenced his character. Now, how about Jacob? How about Esau? Now, going back to Genesis, we were in 25, was it? Yes, Genesis 25. So now we pick up in verses 27. It says, "So the boys grew, and Esau was a skillful hunter, a man of the field, but Jacob was a mild man, dwelling in tents. And Isaac loved Esau because he ate of his game, but Rebekah loved Jacob." Here we are now in the family politics. We see these two boys. Once they were babies in their mother's wombs, They were fighting. Now they were born. Now they've grown up into big men. And everyone's character was shaped. But we see that actually Esau had developed himself as a skillful archer, which turned into a professional hunting career. He was a man's man, very outdoorsy, strong, and a provider. As Isaac was getting older, he was observing both his boys' characters and looking for leadership traits. But Esau stood out. He was respected and admired by both female and male servants of his father's house, and obviously his dad. He really liked how this young man was coming up. Like Pastor Ebb say, the only way to get to a man's heart is through the stomach. It says that Isaac loved who? Esau, because he ate of what? His game. He was giving him meat, and he loved him for that. But then they say that, but Jacob was a mild man. Actually, when you look at the definition of the word mild, it can be insignificant, unimportant, and he was dwelling in tents. So here we see that actually, as Isaac was getting old, the whole camp felt safe with him, and he was the emerging new leader who was really very hairy. Like if you looked at him, even his appearance could scare anyone, you know? Like the guy was so hairy, he has his bow and arrow, and his quiver is full like mine. His presence was also intimidating. And the tribe felt like this is going to be the next guy in line. You know? He was precise in target, skillful in the way he held his bow and arrow, and his arrow was swifter than his prey. Thus made him a name as a skillful hunter. And no doubt it was obvious to everyone that he was going to be the next in line after the death of Isaac. But then on the other end, we see Jacob is a mild man, insignificant man, dwelling in tents. He was a sensitive boy. Always too hard for him to go out to play with other kids. Oh, it's too hard. I want to be inside. He always wanted to be indoor with his mom. He couldn't go out there to do manly projects, manly things. Him and his mother had a special bond. And I think he must have followed his mom wherever she went. He was always there. He was always there. He was a mama's boy. He was also in the kitchen cooking up. He was a good cook. But don't be fooled by that. He was also in the kitchen cooking up and perfecting his scheming skills together with his mom. So everyone looked happy. If you looked at this family and these two boys, the two boys looked happy. Esau looked like he's happy out there in the fields, going and hunting and bringing home food for everyone to eat. And also Jacob was happy in the kitchen cooking the meat that he brings in. Father is happy that he has a son who's going to take on the family line. But also the mother's like, you know what? I have a son who's always here to help me with chores at home. But actually, there was that old underlying sibling rivalry that was still brewing in Jacob's heart. Jacob still struggled with the advantages his old twin brother had over him. He envied him and wished so bad that he had all that Esau had. Nothing had changed from way back when they were still babies in their mother's womb. Because we've already read that actually, we know what happened, that they were fighting still. There was that struggle. That struggle had never ended. It grew as they grew. But I think Esau was oblivious to this struggle. But it was more real to Jacob than ever before. Now, this day and age, families here in America may not understand what patriarchal or patrilineal setup of society works. Because here, most people are very individualistic. But in the Middle East, where families are set up in a patrilineal style, being a firstborn means a lot. Even where I come from in Africa, people from there can surely understand what it means to be a firstborn. Like for me, I am the firstborn son to my father. And because of that, it made me to be part of the patrilineal line, such that when my father died, I was made to be put in his place. All the responsibility he had was given to me. His children became my children, though some of them were even older than me. When they come to me, they talk to me as if they are speaking to their father, because I was made his heir. But it was more than that. Even in Jacob's days, it meant that he was going to be the one who takes on the family line, was the one actually who was going to lead everything. Now, what was at stake here? That's what I want us to understand. Why were they struggling? What was at stake? Well, there was wealth. Actually, it was the second generation wealth. Genesis 14, verses 14 says that, now when Abraham heard that his brother was taken captive, he armed himself with 318 trained servants who were born in his own house and went in pursuit as far as Dan. So this family had actually an army, meaning that a new ruler would be actually the next chief in command. Also, Genesis 24:35, it says that the Lord had blessed my servant greatly. He has become great. He has given him flocks and herds and silver and gold, male and female servants and camels and donkeys. So there were family assets, many. And this was a second generation because Abraham had, but also when Isaac also took on the line, he also acquired more wealth. So we read about actually in Genesis 20, verses 14, 16, say, then Abimelech took sheep, oxen, and male and female servants, and gave them to Abraham, and restored Sarah, his wife, to him. And Abimelech said, see, my land is before you. Dwell where it pleases you. Then to Sarah he said, behold, I have given your brother 1,000 pieces of silver. Indeed, this vindicates you before all who are with you and before everybody. So, this is now all Abraham. He had gold and he could finance the entire nation with the things he had. Isaac, following in line of blessing, also became wealthy. Genesis 26, it says that then Isaac, 26 verses 12 to 13 says that, then Isaac sowed in the land and reaped in the same year 100-fold, and the Lord blessed him. The man began to prosper and continued prospering until he became very prosperous. For he had possession of flocks and possessions of herds and a great number of servants. So the Philistines envied him. So you see, this one man, Isaac, he was so prosperous that even another nation was envying him. So Jacob was seeing all these things in the family. He's like, man, it's such a shame that I'm not the one who's going to take over everything. And he saw that even before he was born, he wanted that. So What were the advantages of the next patriarch in line? Well, the benefits are that the one who would be the next patriarch in line, he would become the next commander-in-chief. He would take over the family estates and finances and the inheritance. He gets a double portion. But also, it was a prestigious and influential position in the family because you begin to be the short caller, like you make all the calls. If it's negotiation with other nations, you are the one to go there and make those negotiations. But what makes someone to be a patriarch? Well, it depended on three things. First, on your birthright, if you are the firstborn male. Second, on merit. If you had good leadership traits, that also would qualify you to take on the family line. And thirdly, favoritism. Because you see that Isaac loved Esau. And because Isaac was the patriarch, if he died because he loved Esau, chances were many that he was going to actually make him the next ruler, the next heir. But the irony was, Jacob had all the odds against him. He was not the firstborn son. Through merit, his twin brother's presence and qualities always overshadowed him. And thirdly, he was not his father's favorite son. So when you look at all the possibilities, there was no way Jacob would ever be the next patriarch. Now, everything depended on Jacob. If he wants to be the next patriarch, everything depended on him. Now Esau was the rising star. He was oblivious about his young brother's struggles. And if he did, maybe he didn't take him too seriously. But Jacob, he was determined. He wanted to be the next patriarch in line after the death of his father Isaac. And he began to think of how can he be one. His first attempt of grabbing his brother's heel upon delivery failed. Now he has to scheme for plan B, and he has to wait for the right time, for the right opportunity. So here we see that actually, though Esau had so many good qualities as a leader, but also he had his weak spot. He had all these amazing hunting skills, but also he had zero tolerance of hunger. Hunger exposed his vulnerability, as well as his young brother Jacob was future-minded and a master manipulator, an exploiter. So what he did, he took time to study his old brother. He knew his weak spot. He knew where he was vulnerable, and he was waiting for the right moment. Genesis 25, 29 to 34, we see how actually this comes into play. He said, now Jacob cooked stew. And Esau came from the field, and he was very weary. And Esau said to Jacob, please feed me with that same red stew, for I am so weary. Therefore his name was called Edom, meaning red. But Jacob said, well, sell me your birthright as of this day. Ba, 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 ba. Yeah, his scheming skills now kicking. His manipulation kicking. His exploitation kicks in. Because this man was now vulnerable. Then 32 Esau said, look, I'm about to die. So what is this birthright to me? It's like I'm so hungry, I'm so famished, I might die right now. If you want a birthright, take it, but give me something to eat. Then Jacob said, well, swear. You gotta swear. Give an oath. So Jacob wanted him to seal that deal by an oath. And an oath could not be reversed. And he didn't want him to come back and say, no, I was kidding, I was just hungry. But when you make an oath, you mean like you're serious and you meant everything. So the guy made an oath. He's like, fine. Now the deal was sealed. So Esau swore to him and sold his birthright to Jacob. And Jacob gave Esau bread and stew and lentils. Then he ate and drank and rose and went his way. The Bible says, thus Esau despised his birthright. Because of his present situation, he thought he was about to die of starvation. He's like, you know what? Take it. Give me something to eat. But for Esau, he didn't know what was at stake at that moment. For him, what was at stake was food. He was not very futuristic in his thinking. So after selling his birthright to his young brother, later he also went after the Canaanite pagan women and married them, which caused his parents so much pain and sorrow of heart, mainly his mother. Because when you read Genesis 26, 34 to 35, it says, when Esau was 40 years old, he took as wives Judith, the daughter of Beri, the Hittite, and Basemath, the daughter of Elon, the Hittite. And they were grief of mind to Isaac and Rebekah. So Esau was a potential future commander-in-chief with so many amazing physical qualities, but he was also not a spiritual guy. He was worldly minded, always trying to satisfy his flesh. He despised godly things. He loved self-indulgence. He lived in the moment and for the present. He lived for here and now. That was Esau. Everything was now. Now, give me what I need now. He didn't care for the future. And that was not a good thing for a leader. He had 2 wives. Can you imagine? Yeah. Chapter 27, verses 1 to 40. Now we're going to see actually what happened after many years. He sold his birthright, and many years actually went as if nothing ever happened. He says, now it came to pass when Isaac was old and his eyes were so dim that he could not see. Then he called Esau, his older son, and said to him, my son. And he answered him, say, here I am. Then he said to him, behold, now I'm old. I do not know the day of my death. Now therefore, please take your weapons, your quiver and your bow, and go out to the field and hunt a game for me, and make me savory food, such as I love, and bring it to me that I may eat, that my soul may bless you before I die. Now Rebekah was listening when Isaac spoke to Esau his son. And Esau went to the field to hunt game and bring it. So Rebekah spoke to Jacob her son, saying, indeed I heard your... She went and spoke to Jacob and said, indeed I heard your father speak to Esau your brother, saying, bring me game and make me savory food for me, that I may eat it and bless you in the presence of the Lord before my death. Now therefore, my son, obey my voice according to what I command you. Go to the flock, bring me from there 2 choice kids of the goats, and I'll make savory, which is like salty or spicy food, from them for your father, such as he loves. Then you shall take it to your father, that he may eat it, and that he may bless you before his death. And Jacob said to his mother Rebekah, but mom, Esau, my brother, is a hairy man, and I'm a smooth-skinned man. Perhaps my father will fail me, and I shall seem to be a deceiver to him, and I shall bring a curse on myself and not a blessing. And his mom was like, son, you will need this. You will thank me later. You just go and let the curse be on me. Only obey my voice and go get the stuff for me. And he went and got them and brought them to his mother. And his mother made the savory or salty or spicy food, such as his father loved. And then Rebekah took the choice clothes of his elder son Esau, which were in her house, and put them on Jacob, her young son. And she put the skins of the kid's goat on his hands and on the smooth part of his neck. Then she gave the salty or spicy food and the bread which she had prepared, into the hand of her son Jacob, and say, here you go. Now it's your turn. Now, Rebekah, she's a perfect con woman. And now she has done her part. Now Jacob is also going to prove his name, but also is going to prove himself as a perfect con man. So I can see now Jacob going into his father's tent with his heart pounding, beating so hard in his chest, with also his voice shaky, because deep in his heart he knows what I'm going to do is not the right thing, but he has to do it. And I can see also the devil behind there saying, you know what, Jacob, you can do it. You got this. Then Jacob goes, Papa, he knocks. Who's that? Your son. Which son? Jacob, I mean Esau. So, and then it's like, okay. And then it's like, Father, I brought your food, your favorite food. I'm ready. Are you ready? Get up and eat. And that your soul may bless me. Now here we're going to see 3 ways how Isaac cross-examined Jacob to make sure that he's not a fraud. So it's after Jacob said that stand up, eat, and that your soul may bless me, the old guy, was like, something is fishy. Something is fishy right here. I don't know what it is. He's like, wow. How is it that you have found it so quickly, my son? That was the first cross-examination. Was about the timing, the speed he had used to get it. Like, how come you've got it so fast, so quickly? You look at this con man, how it goes on. He says, well, because the Lord your God brought it to me. As a perfect schemer, he drags God right into his mess in order to seal his fortune. You see, sometimes when people are lying, they have to bring in something so strong that it may erase your doubt. So he actually brought in God right there. The second cross-examination was about his voice. 21 says, Isaac said to Jacob, please come near that I may feel you, my son, whether you are really my son Esau or not. I can see still Jacob's heart now begins to pound so faster now because he's getting closer to his dad and he's like, ooh, I may be found out right now. And as he now takes steps forward to his dad, slowly approaching him, he's praying that his father does not find out. So he goes and kneels down. And then his father begins to feel him. And then he says, the voice is Jacob's, but the hands are the hands of Esau. So he did not recognize him because his hands were covered up with the goat skin. Good job, Mom. Good planning. The third cross-examination was about the smell. The man was like, no, something's still not right here. So in verses 24, he said, are you really my son Esau? He said, yes, I am. He said, okay, bring it near to me, and I'll eat of it, my son. I'll eat of my son's game so that my soul may bless you. So he brought it near to him, and he ate and brought him wine, and he drank. Then his father Isaac said to him, come near and kiss me, son. And then he came close, and he smelled his clothing, and he said, you smell like Esau? Because his mom had given him Esau's clothes. Good job, Mom. Whew. And Jacob was like, that was close. That was close. He almost got me. So the man now, after cross-examining that, this is the right guy, he began to pour out the blessings upon Jacob. He said that Therefore, may the Lord give you all the dew of heaven, of the fatness of the earth, the plenty of grain and wine. The people serve you, the nations bow down to you. Be masters over your brethren. Let your mother's sons bow down to you. Cursed be everyone who curses you, and blessed be those who bless you. As soon as the blessing was over, guess who comes in the door? Esau. With also his plate of spicy food for his dad. Dad, I'm back, excited. I got it. That's like, what? Who are you? Me, what are you talking about, Dad? Me, your son, Jacob the hunter. I got you food. Like, what? I've been tricked. I've already given out the blessing. Someone came here pretending that is you. Oh my goodness. What is happening in my family? Isaac trembled exceedingly, shocked that he's been duped, conned, tricked, fooled, and deceived. And when Esau heard the words of his father, he cried with exceedingly great, bitter cries, please, Dad, bless me also. Bless me, my father. It's like, son, it's too late. There's nothing left. Everything your brother's taken, it's over. Esau said, have you only one blessing, my father? Bless me also, my father. And then Esau lifted up his voice and wept. He was hurt. It was such a hard task to go in the fields to hunt, and then he has everything, but he comes back, everything is being taken. That's not fair. Why would you do that to me, brother? Why? The book of Hebrews, verses 12, 14 to 17 says like this. It says, pursue peace with all people, and holiness and holiness, without which no one will see the Lord. Looking carefully, lest anyone fall short of the grace of God, lest any root of bitterness springing up cause trouble, and by these many people become defiled. Lest there be any fornicator, profane person like Esau, who for one morsel of food sold his birthright. For you know that afterward, when he wanted to inherit the blessing, he was rejected. For he found no place of repentance, though he sought it diligently with tears. Last week I was teaching the youth downstairs, and I told them about chains and choices. The choices we make end up becoming our chains in the future. For Esau, he made a choice of eating that red meat or beans. But he didn't know that he had already chained himself for the future. Now when the future came, when he needed to get that blessing, he couldn't get it. Sometimes when we are so young, we make some choices and we think they will never catch up to us. But look at him right now. He's crying deeply and hurt. But part of it was his making. He had framed this entire thing. Then Isaac said he gave him a blessing, but it was not really a blessing. Then Esau hated Jacob because of the blessing with which his father blessed him. And Esau said in his heart, the days of mourning of my father are at hand, then I'll kill my brother Jacob. Meaning saying, when my father dies, I'll kill him. And the words were taken to Rebekah that Esau has vowed to kill Jacob as soon as Isaac is dead. She's like, I'm not going to let this happen. So she goes and speaks to Jacob. He's like, you know what? I don't want my son to be killed here. I don't want to be grieved on the same day when you are dead, also my son Jacob dead. I want you to do something for me. I want you to send him far away from here. Take him far away. And once again, Rebekah paves the way for her favorite son. She goes to Isaac and tells him, you know what, Esau married the Canaanite women, and they're such a trouble to me. I don't want Jacob also to make that same choice. I want him to go to my brother Laban, that he may get his wife there. So it was pretty obvious that there was no peace in the family. In order for Isaac to have his sons alive, he had to separate them. He said, you know what, Jacob, you have to go. Chapter 28, it says, then 28 verses 1 says, then Isaac called Jacob and blessed him and charged him and said to him, you shall not take a wife from the daughters of Canaan. Arise, go to Paddan Aram, to the house of Bethuel, your mother's father, and take yourself a wife from there of the daughters of Laban, your mother's brother. Remember when we started, it was like, do you know Laban? So he called him blessed. He called him and blessed him and charged him to not marry the Canaanite women. Now Rebekah comes and she bids farewell to her favorite son. Goodbye, son. And I will send you news when it's safe for you to return. Jacob looks at his mother with so much sadness. In his mind, he sees his father really, really old. He knows that even when he comes back, he will not find him alive. And he's like, Mom, if I'm to come back here, I'm going to come back for you. My brother already wants to kill me. You are the only reason why I should come back. Now, all of a sudden, whatever seemed important becomes not important anymore. He has to separate from the things he loved dearly. Say, I love you, Mom. I love you, son. Then they tear themselves from each other as they part ways. Jacob goes and disappears into the wilderness as Rebekah stands and looking at his favorite son going away, far away, to a land which he had not seen for years. One punishment for their sin is that Jacob and his mother will never see each other again. Now, verses 6 of chapter 28 says, now Jacob went out from Beersheba and went to Haran. So he came to a certain place and stayed there all night, because the sun had set. And he took one of the stones of that place and he put it at his head, that he may lay down to sleep. Fresh from the weariness of the journey and the unknown that awaited him, he couldn't imagine life without his mother, who always loved him, protected and advised him. Suddenly, he felt lost, lonely, and desperate without her. His strength all of a sudden had become his greatest weakness. The Bible says, be careful when you stand, lest you fall. Jacob thought, man, I've outed my brother. But then, right now, he's like, it was not worth it. All that he wanted had just slipped through the cracks of his fingers, because he thought he was going to inherit all these things, but now they've sent him away. He has nothing. The only thing he has is his clothes. He lost his physical inheritance, family status. He remained his father's son and mother, but where he was going to start afresh. No one knew about the status of his family. He was going to start afresh, from scratch. And then looks into the vast expanse of the night sky. Everything very quiet and still. He didn't know where to start, but also doubting whether he will ever come back home safe. He didn't care about the possessions anymore. He didn't care about what his brother had anymore. He began to regret the memory of how he tricked his father and brother. It was not worth it at this moment. He gazes into the night sky, looking at Orion and Betelgeuse up there, how they move, but also wondering if there is a God out there. And if there is a God out there, what does he think about him? Does he see him as a con man? Does he see him as a failure? Does he see him as a man who has ruined people's futures and lives? I don't know if you've been there, because I've been there. When you make that choice and you feel like it's the right thing to do, but also deep inside you know it's not the right thing to do. When you want to do it, you feel like you want to do it, but after doing it, you look back and you're like, why did I do it? It was not worth it. I don't want it anymore. I remember when I was just in my early 20s, we were living in a community and we were doing a lot of drugs. And most of the young men there used to come to our house and we do drugs. So the community came to a point where they said, we don't want these people these guys in our community anymore. They went to our landlord and to all the people who had houses. They say, never ever rent them a house. And this landlord say, I don't want your money anymore. I want you out. She kicked us out. We didn't have anywhere to go. Everything I knew now was falling apart. I didn't know where to go. I remember my friend who lived 100 miles away from where I was living, way deep in the village. He said, Chief, you want to come? You can come. I remember me being in the bus, looking at the trees going behind me, leaving everything I knew, my friends, my family, everyone, and me going to a place that I didn't know. I was scared. I was there, a lonely man. And when I reached there, the cops saw me. They didn't know anything about me, but they were suspicious of me because it's obvious when someone is doing drugs, I guess. So they began asking, who is this guy? And I was afraid, so I kept all the days that I was there hiding in the house, but doing a lot of drugs. I was so oppressed and depressed. But that was the beginning of God breaking me. God trying to work in me. That now God was going about to start a new journey in Jacob's life. And that's what I call the blessedness of possessing nothing leading to brokenness. Now Jacob is possessing nothing, everything's gone, but now he's broken. And now that's the perfect time for God to come and talk to him. Look what happens there. 28:13 say, the Lord comes and says, I am the Lord, the God of Abraham, your father, the God of Isaac. The land on which you lie, I'll give to you and your descendants. Also, your descendants shall be as the dust of the earth. You shall spread abroad west and east, to the north and to the south, and in you and in your seed all the families of the earth shall be blessed. Behold, I am with you, and I'll keep you wherever you go, and I'll bring you back to this land, for I will not leave you until I have done what I've spoken to you. Guy who was broken, scared, lonely. That's the time that he felt like he needed God. And God came and he spoke comforting words to him. Comforting words to him. As the worship team comes back up here, I also want to invite you to that place of brokenness. To that place where you can let God come and minister to your heart. I don't know what you're going through right now, but maybe you need to hear those comforting words from your father, like Jacob. There is no farther place where his love won't find you. Jacob was out in the wilderness, but still, God's love was there. God's love still found him there. It doesn't matter how far you may feel you are. It doesn't matter what your story is. Like Jacob's story was a bad story. He wants to find you where you are. And though we see dimly, one day we can see clearly His perfection in every part of our story. Like for me, I was a homeless guy staying on the streets of Kampala, having no food, doing drugs, doing all sorts of bad things. But His love always was there for me. His love was always following me. I didn't know that I could ever be a pastor, that would ever stand before you and talk to you about things of God. Never. He's coming with love. He came with love to Jacob. He didn't condemn him. He didn't say, you supplanter, you conman, you deceiver, because he had come to that place of brokenness. The Bible says that a broken and a contrite heart or spirit, the Lord will never despise.